What if the reason you feel stuck is because you talk too much about what you're going to do and not enough time actually doing it? Think about that for a second. Not out loud, just in your head. Because this is where it starts to get uncomfortable. You have plans, you have goals, you have dreams you've explained to friends, family, coworkers, strangers on the internet. And somehow, you're still in the same place. But here's where it gets real. Every time you announce what you're about to do, your brain feels like you've already done it. A strange little reward, a fake sense of progress, a quiet satisfaction that costs you nothing. And that's when it hits you. You're addicted to the feeling of potential, not the work required to realize it. Be honest. Does this feel familiar? You tell people you're working on something. You say you're about to start. You explain the plan in beautiful detail. But when nobody's watching, you stall, you delay, you scroll. Because the applause for the idea already happened. Now here's the part nobody tells you. The loudest people are usually the least dangerous. The ones who talk the most about success rarely arrive there. Because real growth, real progress, real transformation is quiet. Painfully quiet. Wait till you hear this. The most powerful move you can make in your life is to disappear for a while. Not from existence, but from announcements, from explanations, from proving, from performing. And this is where things change. Because when you stop telling people what you're doing, you're left alone with the only thing that matters. Doing it. No audience, no validation, no early praise, just you and the work. Which is exactly the part you've been avoiding. Why do we keep doing this even when we know better? Why do we feel the urge to tell everyone our next move before we've even taken the first step? Because talking is easier than transforming. Talking feels productive. Work feels uncomfortable. Talking gives you attention. Work gives you results. And your brain loves attention. But success? Success doesn't care about attention. It only responds to effort. And this next part changes everything. When you choose silence, something strange happens. You stop performing your ambition and start living it. No more explaining your diet. You just eat better. No more posting about your goals. You just chase them. No more convincing people you're serious. You just become serious. Is this you or just me? Because most people don't realize this trap until years pass. Years of almost starting. Years of about to change. Years of big things coming soon. And nothing actually comes. Not because you're lazy, but because you've been leaking your energy through words. Every conversation about your goals is energy spent. Every explanation is motivation drained. Every announcement is pressure added. And pressure without action becomes anxiety. That heavy feeling in your chest? That's not confusion. That's unspent potential. But here's where it gets hopeful. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a new plan. You don't need another video, podcast, or book. You need silence. Because silence removes the performance. And without performance, you're forced to confront the truth. Are you really working? Or are you just talking about working? This is the uncomfortable question most people avoid their entire lives. They hide behind updates. They hide behind plans. They hide behind soon. But you're still here listening, which means some part of you already knows. Some part of you is tired of hearing yourself say what you're going to do. Some part of you wants to shut up and get serious. Type A if you felt this, B if you haven't. Because the moment you decide to move in silence, you remove the option to pretend. You either do the work or you face yourself. And facing yourself is terrifying. No excuses, no audience, no one to impress, just results, or the lack of them. But this is where your power is hiding. Not in motivation, Not in hype, not in inspiration, in privacy. Privacy is where discipline grows. Privacy is where habits form. Privacy is where identity changes. And nobody claps for you there. Nobody even knows. Which is exactly why it works. This next part is uncomfortable. The people around you don't need to know your next move. Not because they don't care, but because their opinions, good or bad, will interfere. Praise makes you slow down. Doubt makes you overthink. Both are distractions. Silence protects your focus. Silence protects your momentum. Silence protects your transformation. And that's when you realize you don't need to tell anyone what you're building. You just need to build it. You know what's strange? The moment you stop talking about your goals, people start noticing you more. Not because you said something, but because you changed. Your energy shifts. You're calmer, more focused, less reactive. Because you're no longer spending mental energy explaining yourself. You're using it to move. And this is where it gets interesting. When you work in silence, you start seeing how loud the world really is. Everyone announcing, everyone posting, everyone proving. And you, quietly progressing. That contrast gives you an advantage most people never experience. You stop comparing, because you're too busy building. And here's the part nobody warns you about. Silence feels lonely at first. No one asking about your plans, no one hyping you up, no one checking in. It almost feels like nobody cares. But that's when it hits you. You were never doing it for them. You were doing it for the feeling of being seen. And now that's gone. So what's left? Just the real reason. The one you buried under all the noise. The one that doesn't need applause. Be honest, does this feel familiar? You start waking up earlier. You start using your time differently. You start saying no without explaining why. Because you're protecting something. Your momentum. And momentum is fragile. It breaks the moment you expose it to opinions. Wait till you hear this. Most dreams don't die from failure. They die from exposure. You tell the wrong person too early. You get the wrong reaction. You feel stupid. You slow down. You hesitate. And slowly, you stop. Not because you couldn't do it, but because you let outside voices inside too soon. This next part changes everything. When nobody knows what you're doing, there's no pressure to look successful. So you're free to be messy, free to fail, free to try again without embarrassment. That freedom is powerful, because growth is ugly before it's impressive. And when you work in silence, nobody sees the ugly phase. They only see the results, which makes it look like magic. But it was never magic. It was privacy. Why do we keep underestimating this? Why do we think success needs an audience? Because we've been trained to believe visibility equals progress. But visibility often kills progress. You start caring about how it looks, instead of whether it works. And that's when it hits you. You've been managing perception instead of building reality. Is this you, or just me? Because the more you think about it, the more obvious it becomes. The people who truly level up in life, they disappear for a while. They go quiet. They stop explaining. They stop posting. And then one day, they reappear different. Not louder, stronger, calmer, more certain. And everyone says the same thing. Where did this come from? But you know the answer. Silence. This next part is subtle but important. When you don't tell people your plans, you also remove their expectations. And expectations are heavy. They sit on your mind. They make you feel watched. They make you feel judged. Even if nobody is judging you, it's all in your head. But it's enough to slow you down. Silence removes that weight. You move lighter. You think clearer. You act faster. Which one are you right now, stuck or starting? Because this is the line most people never cross. They keep one foot in talking and one foot in doing. And that split focus keeps them average. But the moment you choose one, fully, everything changes. You stop checking if people noticed. You stop waiting for encouragement. You stop needing reminders, because the work itself becomes enough. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop announcing your moves, you start surprising yourself. You do things you didn't think you could. You stay consistent longer than usual. You push through boredom without drama, because there's no story to tell, just progress to make. And progress, when it's private, feels different. It feels personal, sacred almost, like something you don't want to expose too early. Because you know, the second you talk about it, you risk losing it. This next part is uncomfortable but true. Most people don't need more confidence. They need less talking. Confidence grows when actions stack quietly, not when words pile up publicly. And the more you prove things to yourself in silence, the less you feel the need to prove anything to anyone else. If this makes sense, say something, because you're starting to see it now. The loud life is draining. The quiet life is productive. And that's when you realize, working hard in silence isn't about being mysterious. It's about protecting your energy, protecting your focus, protecting your growth, so that one day, you don't have to say anything at all. Your results will do the talking. And this is where it gets real. Silence doesn't just change how you work, it changes who you become. Because when nobody is watching, you meet the version of yourself that doesn't perform. The version that doesn't try to impress. The version that doesn't need validation to keep going. And that version? That's the one capable of real success. Not the loud one, not the motivated for a day one, the steady one, the quiet one, the disciplined one. You start noticing something strange. You don't feel the urge to update people anymore. You don't feel the need to prove progress, because you're finally experiencing progress. And progress, when it's real, is satisfying enough on its own. Here's the part nobody tells you. Talking about your goals gives you a small dopamine hit, a fake reward. Your brain feels like you've already done something, so it relaxes. You slow down. You delay the real work. But when you keep your goals to yourself, your brain stays hungry, restless, focused, because the only way to get that reward is to actually do the work. Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Why do we trade real progress for social approval? Because approval is easier than effort. But silence forces effort, and effort builds something approval never can: self-respect. Think about it for a second. When was the last time you truly respected yourself? Not because someone praised you, but because you knew what you were doing behind the scenes. That quiet pride, that inner nod, that feeling of, I'm actually doing it. That's the fuel most people never discover, because they keep interrupting it with noise. And then something unexpected happens. You stop caring who's ahead of you, because you're too focused on moving forward yourself. Comparison loses its grip, jealousy fades, distraction weakens, and you finally feel free. Free from the pressure to be seen, free from the need to explain, free from the urge to perform. Wait till you hear this. Silence also reveals who truly supports you, because when you stop sharing updates, the people who only like the entertainment disappear, and the ones who care about you as a person remain. That clarity is priceless. You realize how much of your social circle was built around showing, not growing. Be honest, does this feel familiar? Because this is the moment most people get uncomfortable. They start feeling isolated. They think something's wrong. They think they're losing connections. But what they're actually losing is distraction. And distraction leaving your life can feel like loneliness at first. But it's not loneliness. It's space. Space to think. Space to build. Space to become. And that's when it hits you. You've never had this much mental clarity before, because for the first time, your mind isn't split between doing the work and talking about the work. It's all going into one direction. And that direction? Forward. This next part changes how you see discipline. Discipline isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look exciting. It looks boring, repetitive, quiet, which is exactly why most people avoid it. They want the loud version of success, the visible version. But the real version is invisible for a long time. And you're finally okay with that. Which one are you right now? Seeking attention or seeking progress? Because you can't have both at the same time. Not fully, not seriously. One will always steal energy from the other. And this is where your identity starts shifting. You stop being someone who plans to do things, and you become someone who just does them. No announcements, no build-up, no drama, just action, consistent, quiet, relentless. And the more you live like this, the more confident you become. Not loud confidence, calm confidence. The kind that doesn't need to speak, the kind that doesn't react to doubt, the kind that knows. And that knowing changes how you walk, how you talk, how you think. Because you're carrying a secret. Not a secret from others, a secret from your old self. You're becoming someone they wouldn't recognize, and nobody sees it happening. That's the beauty of it. I used to think I needed people to see my effort to make it real. Turns out, the less people saw it, the more real it became. Because it was no longer for show. It was for growth. And growth, when protected, accelerates. If this makes sense, say something. Because you're starting to understand now. Silence isn't hiding. Silence is building.
And now, you're different. Not in a dramatic movie scene way. In a quiet, undeniable way. The kind that only you can feel. You wake up and there's no rush to check who noticed you. No urge to share what you're about to do. No need to prove momentum, because momentum is already happening. Internally, steadily, powerfully. This is the version of you that people never talk about, the one that exists before the results, the one that builds the results. And here's the strange part. You start enjoying the process more than the outcome, because the process is yours, private, sacred, untouched by opinions, untouched by pressure, untouched by comparison. And that's when it hits you. You were never tired from working hard. You were tired from performing hard, from trying to look productive instead of being productive, from managing perceptions instead of managing habits. And dropping that performance feels like putting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you were carrying. Now here's the part nobody tells you. When you work in silence long enough, you stop fearing failure. Because failure, in private, doesn't hurt your ego. It doesn't embarrass you. It doesn't become a story others talk about. It becomes a lesson only you learn from, which makes you braver. You try more. You experiment more. You risk more. Because there's no audience to disappoint. Why does this keep happening? Why do people who work quietly often move faster than those who talk loudly? Because their energy isn't leaking. It's focused, undisturbed, undistracted. And you're starting to feel that difference. You feel sharper, more present, more intentional. Even your thoughts are calmer, because your mind isn't juggling, how does this look, and how do I do this? It's only focused on one thing now. Doing. Wait till you hear this. The real reward of silence isn't success. It's peace. A deep, steady peace that comes from knowing you're aligned with your own growth. Not chasing applause, not chasing approval, just chasing progress. And progress, when honest, brings peace. Be honest. When was the last time you felt that kind of peace? Not distracted, not anxious, just steady. That's what this journey has been giving you. Quietly, slowly,
powerfully. And then one day, results start showing. Small at first, then undeniable. And people begin to notice. They ask questions. They wonder how you did it. They think it happened quickly. They think it happened suddenly. They didn't see the months of silence, the days nobody clapped, the nights nobody knew you were working. They only see the noise success makes, not the silence that built it. And here's the beautiful part. You don't feel the urge to explain. You don't feel the need to tell the story, because the story wasn't for them. It was for you. Most people want the spotlight before they've built the stage. You built the stage in the dark, and now the spotlight doesn't intimidate you. It doesn't excite you either. It just exists, because you know where the real work happened, in the quiet. Which one are you right now? Waiting to be seen, or preparing to be undeniable? Because that choice determines everything. And this is where the identity locks in. You are no longer someone chasing attention. You are someone chasing mastery. You are no longer someone announcing effort. You are someone living it. You are no longer someone who needs motivation. You are someone who relies on discipline. And discipline, as you now know, is silent. I used to think success needed to be loud to be real. Turns out, the loud part is just the echo. The real part is the quiet. Think about it for a second. All the people you admire, you only saw their results. You never saw their silence. But now you understand it, because you've lived it, and you're still living it. This is where things change permanently. You don't go back to the old way, because the old way feels exhausting now. Performing feels fake. Talking feels unnecessary. Posting feels distracting. And working quietly feels natural, feels powerful, feels right. If this hit home, don't just scroll. Subscribe and start choosing a lighter way to live.